Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with a Vet. Happy Sunday to each and every one of you. I have a great guest waiting in the wings. But before we get to my guest, I wanted to remind you of Larry Burke. He was my guest. We had two parts for him. He is a Vietnam veteran. He wrote Quiet Heroes, Stories from the Front Lines of the Vietnam War. Larry Burke. You can go out and get this book on Amazon and help support him. A wonderful guest. You can also go out if you haven't checked him out. There are two Larry Burks out there. It's the first one is just Larry Burke, Vietnam Navy veteran. The second one is part two. Additionally, James Blackwell. So James Blackwell, he is a historian on the Korean War, and he wrote Gunners, the B-29 machine gunners in the Korean War. Go check him out. He's also in the process of writing another book. This would be his second book here, but you can go to Amazon and get this one out. So show some love for our veterans in that regard. And then also, for those who have not heard of Simmons Law, when we hit our 1,000 subscribers, Simmons Law has graciously donated these Yeti metal can koozies. And I have several different sizes and colors back here that will be listed as giveaways, as well as a couple of other items as well. So Simmons Law, they are for veterans. So it's Simmons Law Vet, vets, so that's plural.com. And you can check them out. Now, they are for profit, but they do help veterans who have been struggling to get rated properly. So, but they do have free consults. So if you're interested, you can go there and check them out as well. So without further ado, if you would help me please to welcome Marie Slider Henriksen. Hello, hello.
Hello.
How are
Hi, how's it
you?
going?
It's going
Um,
great.
I'm doing good. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Excellent. How's the weather in your neck of the woods?
It's beautiful right now. I'm in Utah and things are kind of like warming up. It's really interesting. So, yeah, we had a cool couple of days and then it's back warm like in the 50s and 60s right now. So,
Oh, yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, we've had some really warm weather. We've gotten up near 80s. And again, I'm down south, but I think in the next couple of days, we're supposed to drop back into the 20s. So we've
Where are
got
you?
wind, Tennessee,
Okay.
and we've got wind gusts up to 40 miles an hour until tomorrow morning. So, woohoo.
I
Um,
do not envy you.
the allergies, yeah, they're just terrible, terrible here. So, but thank you, first and foremost, for agreeing to come on and sharing your story. I really appreciate it. And I got to know you a little bit on Tip of the Spear last month. So it was great meeting you there. And again, thank you. So I like to start by asking my guests to tell us a little bit about who you were as a child.
Who I was as a child.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I grew up with a pretty rocky childhood. I was in foster care, born to addict alcoholic parents, dealt with some different types of traumas and stuff. And so as a child, I kind of never knew where I belonged, or I was very fearful of abandonment. And so as a child, I kind of became a
Mhm.
chameleon to kind of fit in. I was this happy-go-lucky, I want everybody to like me because I don't want them to leave me. Or when that wouldn't work, I would become kind of like a peacock to like stand out. I've got to be loud. I've got to be obnoxious. So I was very much the bubbly, loud, obnoxious pushover, you know. Along with that, however, there was a lot of optimism, I tried to have a lot of optimism. I loved creativity. I loved to, go and spend time with friends. I loved playing school. That was kind of like one of the things that me and the
Wow.
neighbor kids would play school. I was good at school, and that was kind of where I found my safety.
Mhm.
I was definitely like the teacher's pet. I sought, sought comfort in the adults at school. I worked in the library, or the cafeteria, kind of helping out the teachers and yeah, I was very social. I tried to fit in everywhere. I was one of those people that known by many, but well, acknowledged by many, but known by few, if that makes
I
sense.
get you. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, like, I would socialize with a lot of different people, but I only had, like, a very small core of friends, and I also was, somebody who got picked on a lot, and I just kind of, "Oh, I'm okay, I'm okay." I never acknowledged my emotions or any of that stuff and never knew how to stand up for myself and kind of became like the butt of jokes and stuff like that. So there was a lot of ups and downs. I also tried to get into like music, but I never really stuck with it until I got into junior high and started singing,
Oh,
you know,
nice.
but I've always loved creativity. That's something that was my foundation. And I also loved God. I didn't really understand him very much. I was raised in a very conservative Christian household, and as a child, I knew that he existed. I belong to. I'm back into my childhood religion now, which is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints. But as a child, I didn't really understand it. I was still reeling from a lot of trauma. I had other things that were going on, and I kind of knew about God and the foundations that my parents taught me in childhood helped me get to a life of sobriety and love and spirituality now, but back then I didn't really appreciate it. But I knew that God was there, I just didn't understand him. And so that's kind of like in everything that I had going on, I found my solace in God because I didn't feel like I could trust people, but I also didn't know how to trust God either. And so there was just a lot of insecurity in my childhood, but also a lot of love that I just didn't know how to give or receive. Um, I also was kind of like dealing with I addictions has something that's been in my life since childhood, and the biggest one in childhood was food addiction. And so I would find my comfort in trying to get people to like me, or when I didn't feel like that was happening, that it was in food or stuff like that, distraction. It was kind of a lot of ups and downs in childhood,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. So tell me then about your education. You said you liked school, so you did well?
I did super well in elementary school. I was, like, in the advanced math classes. I did really, really wonderful. I loved school. Like I said, that was kind of my solace, but it also was a distraction, and it was my way of trying to get, like, positive feedback and attention, and, I don't know if you want me to continue moving on, but there was a massive change between elementary and
Yeah.
junior high.
Yeah.
So, between elementary and junior high, I was dealing with some when I was going through puberty, I was dealing with a lot of body issues. I ended up getting into self-harm, bulimia, and I also had somebody that was inappropriately touching me. And
Mm.
so that kind of led into I was also introduced to drugs and alcohol at that time. And so I started, instead of using my school as the escape, it started becoming, distraction in other ways.
Right.
And I stopped caring so much about school because school, it was like I was putting on that show to get people to like me or to get my, adults to notice me. And then at this point, I just kind of stopped caring and started rebelling, you know
Yeah.
and, so I ended up spending time with not so good people and, like, the situations were not the best, and I ended up my parents switched me to another school, um, and I started doing a little bit better there for a while. I actually got into seminary when I was in like ninth grade through my church, and I was still there was a lot of ditching school, there was a lot of, over sexualization, the partying. I actually started, working at 15, and some of my coworkers, and I started a metal band. We're you know?
Nice.
So there was creativity there still,
Yeah.
but it was mostly about, like, there's just partying and being obnoxious and stuff like that, and I kind of, I put myself in just, not the best of situations, but I also had started singing, and singing is
Mhm.
something that I just started thriving. My mom basically said when I turned 12 and got into junior high, she's like, "If you are going to be singing, we're gonna make you good at it," because I was completely tone deaf, completely. And so she put me in choirs, and so that was kind of one of my big saving graces was getting into choirs. I did a little bit of sports, but my body never felt right in sports. Found out, now, and I'm sure that we'll talk about it later, but I have a genetic condition called hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
my body makes a defective collagen, and so my joints degenerate a lot quicker. Um, and so I knew when I was younger, I just never felt right, and there was a couple different layers to that. There was the trauma and the abuse from my childhood. There was also the addictive personality, the blooming alcoholism that was happening, but also my physical body just didn't feel right. And everyone was just like, "Oh, that's just in your head," "Oh, you just need more exercise."
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
90s, 2000s, I was a kid, like there really wasn't much to go on back then, and so just sports never really stuck with me, but music did. Music and socializing was
Yeah.
my big thing, and keeping base with spirituality a little bit. I had some really amazing spiritual experiences, with my church. I was able to go to conference when I was in high school, and anyways, it's a big general conference where the prophet and the apostles go, and that was something that was really awesome. Um, but as I was, kind of getting into trauma and not the best lifestyle, I played hard, I worked hard at school, or at like at work or like socializing and this, that, and the other, but I played a lot harder, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. It's interesting because you talk about singing, and that was kind of my outlet too. And from elementary school, right when they had music class and everybody had to go, and all the way through high school, and even made it to state in my junior year. But it was a lot of fun, and still I sang all the way up until, well, basically 2020, well, 2021, I guess. I ended up getting COVID, and it kind of messed with my lungs a little bit, trying to get a full breath and keep that full breath, and so that made it really tough. But and I kind of bowed out of it for a while, and then I got asked to sing at a a gathering, let's say, and we'll call it a gathering. There's over 600 attendees, and so I did. And then on top of it, volunteered to sing the national anthem. And I hadn't sung the national anthem since I had been in my 20s. And it was like, oh my gosh. So it was a struggle to get there. And of course, for me, I didn't want to let anybody down, especially with the national anthem, right? And it's like, so I had to drop it an octave because I can't hit those notes anymore, and trying to hold out those notes, I can't do that very well. So what I did is I slowed it down. So instead of like a minute and 30, minute and 45 seconds, I did it in like 2 minutes and 30 seconds. But yeah, that was my outlet for a long time. And it does a couple things. One, it helps emotionally, right? You can pour your emotions out into song. And then two, it allows for some creativity also. So yeah, it totally makes sense to me for you to go that route. Now, do you still like to sing?
So I kind of have gone through a journey like you. Over the years, my voice has taken a huge hit because of, like I'm 9 years sober, but
Congratulations.
with the weed and alcohol and nicotine, smoking and stuff like that, there was a lot of wear and tear I put on my body. But in the military, I also had toxic exposure, which also put issues in my throat, lungs, sinuses, all that stuff. And then the hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome also affects my connective tissues. And I also have sleep apnea. So there's many different layers that have
A
affected.
conglomerate. Yeah.
Yes. And so over the years, I have lost a lot of my capabilities in speaking or in singing and just my voice in general. Like even just my speaking voice has been affected, and um so I started doing some speech therapy for a little while, which kind of helped, but then a lot of other things took over. But, I have resorted to, as you know, I write poetry,
Yes.
and so that's kind of where I get most of my creative outlet now is writing. I don't sing much. I sing at church, or kind of at home, but
Mhm.
I too also used to do national anthem at different
Yeah.
places and
Yeah.
venues. I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So I've I've struggled.
Yeah. And that
I
happens to the best of us, unfortunately.
In
Um,
in high school, I ended up getting into the audition a cappella choir my senior year, and that was wonderful.
yeah, which is nice. So tell me a little bit. So you graduate high school. Um, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I barely graduated. A as I was saying, I kind of, like, partied hard, and then
Hmm.
I was living in Arizona, moved up to Utah, ended up partying hard, getting raped. I and I put myself in a situation and they took advantage of the situation and I kind of lost a lot of value in myself and I barely graduated. I had to take many classes just to graduate and so I did graduate, but barely. And the day before I graduated is when I joined the military officially.
Okay. And so what was it that made you decide to join the branch that you chose?
So wasn't ever going to be in the military. Like never thought about it. But I had gotten an argument with my parents, and I was like, "Hey, I need to do something after I graduate because I'm like I'm not getting into college. I'm not happy where I'm at. I'm uncomfortable." And I got in an argument, and my dad made the joke, "Why don't you join the Navy or something?" Because he was Navy back in the '60s.
Okay.
And I remember when he said that, it triggered a memory of when I was younger, seeing a commercial for the army, and it was "Be all that you can be in the army."
Yeah.
And I just knew I wanted to join the army. And so the next week after the argument, I was in, and I graduated, and, a month and a half after I graduated, I went to basic training. So, my dad was pissed because I joined for 6 years, and he was like, "You should have done 3 or 4." Anyways, yeah, it was
Well,
funny.
well. So, okay. So tell me a little bit about what it was like for you then when you first get off the bus at uh the recruiting or at the base for basic training.
So, I don't really remember that. I remember being, my parents and my brother dropping me off to the MEPS hotel.
Mhm.
I stayed the night at the hotel, and I don't remember getting to traveling or getting
Really?
to, Fort Jackson. There is a lot of holes in my memory from, I've got borderline personality and PTSD, and so there's a lot of dissociation that's happened, and also my choice in lifestyle for so long. And so I've lost a lot of my memories. So I don't remember, getting there. I don't remember what that was like. I remember some very poignant memories from being in basic training and some of the training, but I don't remember the the beginning at all.
Okay. So tell me, what do you remember from basic training? Any funny stories that you might have?
So there was one that was super, super funny. And it might be offensive. But
That's
so
all right. We're all good here.
so adults like me or like people in authority sometimes tend to like me because I am a chameleon, like when people say I like your personality, it's like thanks, I created it for you. I saw I saw that on social media the other day and I was like, I love that because that's how I was. I was the chameleon. Like I created this facade for other people. And so my drill sergeants loved me. They loved me. And they also loved to pick on me, but they mostly loved to confide in me while they picked on other people. And one of the situations that happened is I remember I was sitting, training. We were on the 50 cal, and
Ooh.
the 50 cal is a big, huge weapon, right? For
Hmm.
anybody who doesn't know. And we're
They're fun
sitting
to
on the
shoot.
ground. Yeah, so we're sitting on the ground, and there's the tripod on there, and I'm sitting there, and like leaning back and getting ready to shoot. And my drill sergeant comes up, and he's like, "Hey, Slider," and I was like, "Cause Slider's my maiden name." And so he's like, "Hey, Slider." I was like, "Roger, Dillstern." He's like, "So, tonight, I want you to take your razor and I want you to go to that girl, that girl, that girl, and that girl, and tell them to shave their flippin' mustaches."
Wow.
Oh, it's horrible. But it was so funny, so
Did you make
funny.
your shot after that?
What do you mean?
Did you make
Oh,
your
oh,
on the 50 cal?
I don't
I'd
remember. I don't remember.
have
I don't
been
know.
laughing too hard. It had been
Yeah.
all over the place at that point.
Yeah, so
Oh,
there
that's
was that
funny.
one. That one was fun. Another one was, have you ever seen Top Gun?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so so
I'm a product of, well, born in the 70s, product of the 80s, right? So trust me, I'd probably seen the original Top Gun over 100
yes.
times. Yeah.
Okay, so my last name was Slider, and so one of the guys, his name is Slider, and his call sign. And so there was one day that I was standing in line for chow, and a drill sergeant comes up to me, and he like sniffs me behind my ear. He's like, "Slider, you stink," and that's a line from the movie. But I did not know that, and so I just kind of like, I'm sorry, drill sergeant, I took a shower," and everybody around just starts cracking up because they know it's a line from a movie, and I'm, like, mortified that I'm stinking, and this drill sergeant is telling me that I'm stinking, so that one was funny, and I had to go into chow, and when I went into chow, I was like, "What just happened? Like, do I really stink? Like, why is everyone laughing? Like, do I stink that bad that everyone's laughing?" And somebody had to explain, "No, it's from a movie." And I had never seen the movie, and so it was just the funniest thing.
Did you go back and ever watch it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, and I've watched it multiple times since
Yeah.
then, and
Yeah.
I love it. But
That's funny.
those are my top 2. A really cool memory that happened was my last day when I was there. So, like I said, my drill sergeants liked me, and I got special treatment without realizing it, at some point,
Nothing wrong with
but
that.
yeah, so the very last day, the drill sergeants, like, we're all cleaning our gear. We're sitting in the barracks, and one of the drill sergeant comes out and he's like, "Slider, have someone clean your gear." But, he's like, "Clean your shit." And I was like, "Okay." And so I had somebody, "Hey, I need you to clean this." I thought I was in like so much trouble. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like what is going on?" I go in there and I'm like standing there and like, Roger, drill sergeant, like what's wrong? And he's like, sit down. And I was like, okay, and there are the 3 drill sergeants in there, and they're all like one of them's like, "So, Slider, getting ready to graduate, you said you're Mormon, right?" And I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "My wife is too." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "I got some questions for you." And so we literally just sat there for a couple hours talking about the Mormon church. And I was like, "This is so weird," because, over the years, I kind of was in and out of the church and, but and also in my lifestyle, like I wasn't very active. But something that's been unique with me is that I've always had a testimony of the gospel. I've always had a testimony of my church. And so I have had this weird, like, I had a bishop once tell me, "You're going on a mission that's different than everybody else." Like, you think of the Mormon missionaries, right? And they're walking with the name tag
Oh,
and
yeah.
the white shirts and stuff like that. That's not how it's been for me. It's people know that I am who I am. I have my beliefs and I also make a lot of mistakes and I don't I'm not it's not being a hypocrite. It's like, "Hey, I have these beliefs and I'm not quite ready to fulfill them yet, but I do have them, and I believe in the gospel." And so people talk to me about it because they don't want to go talk to the missionaries, but I'm still kind of in the lifestyle they are and I still have my beliefs. So they're like, "Oh, you're safe." And so it just wound up just a really cool experience, and I enjoyed it. So
Nice,
those are
nice.
my top 3 memories. So
Oh, those are wonderful memories. And so you graduate, and where do you go for AIT?
So that was in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and for AIT, I went to, Fort Sam Houston in Texas, and, I was a medic, so I did medical training.
Oh, wow. So was that what you originally signed up for? That was your original
Yeah,
MOS? Okay,
yeah.
good. Now, what was it that made you decide to choose that MOS out of all of the MOSs out there?
So I got a pretty decent score with my ASVAB, though you ask me right now, I wouldn't be able to tell you what it is because I don't know. They told me, "Hey, choose your job," basically. And I knew that emotionally, I could not handle if I was required to take someone's life. Like like I knew that it was a possibility always, but
Right, right, right.
I also didn't think I had the skills to do any of the other stuff. And I've always been a caretaker, like, for many, many years, that was a trauma response being a caretaker, and I felt like I had to be a caretaker. Now I choose to be, and I let go of the expectations, and I do it because I choose to be.
Right.
But back then, I was still in this, like, expectation, I have to take care of people, and that was just my logical it just made sense to me. I wanna be a medic, you know? I feel like it has the most potential for after I get out of the military, and I wanna be able to take care of people.
Which makes perfect sense. So tell me what it was like for your training as a medic.
So there was a couple different layers to that. Yet again, I had not dealt with any of my trauma and I worked hard and played harder. And so I was distracting in a lot of different ways. We'll just leave it at that. However, the actual job training was really wonderful. So they taught me how to be an EMT basic, and so the first couple of months was a little bit of field training, but not really. It was more in the classroom training and
Mhm.
stuff like that. Um, and then after I graduated that portion, they were like, "Okay, we're gonna do combat training now. Forget everything you just learned, and we are going to deploy."
You gotta love that, right? I mean, it's like, come on now.
Yeah. So so
The
they
basics.
Yeah, so sorry, excuse me.
You're good.
So they basically, they're like, "Okay, ABCs, airway, breathing, circulation." And then, in combat training, it's like, "No, it's ABC, hemorrhage. Always look for hemorrhage first." And it's like, "Oh, well, that's completely different," So there's just a lot of different things. Um, I remember I remember just some of the catchy sayings that they did. Oh, what is it? Oh, I can't be Oh, I can't remember. Anyways, there's a
That's
couple
okay.
different I learned a lot of different things in there. But one of my favorite trainings while I was in there was IVs. I loved IVs. I learned how to give them to myself.
Oh,
I learned how to give them to other people. One of the funnest and most scary and horrible parts of giving IVs in a combat training class is that you have to do the IV and then you have to tape it around the arm. And the way that they make sure that it's secure is they will actually take your bag of saline and throw it across the room. So, you
no,
don't
thank
secure
you.
it right just once. There's only just once that you don't secure it right, and then from then on, you secure it right the rest of the way. Because yeah, because you have to be prepared for, like, combat and moving people during combat, and it's like, "Okay, well, we need to have this thing secured so we can just pick them up and go."
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was one of the most intense things, but
Here,
there was
so how many of those suckers got ripped out of people's arms while you were
a
training?
lot. Oh, a lot.
Ugh.
Oh, yeah.
I have a phobia of needles. So yeah, no, I would not. I could probably do it to other people, but having it done to me is my phobia.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. No,
crazy.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed learning about the medical stuff.
Yes, yes, yeah. I studied, my husband and I both, just before we had moved to Tennessee. We were studying to be EMTs. So, yeah, we were just starting to get into a lot of that before we ended up moving. So it was like, well, okay, moving on. Next.
Yeah.
So tell me about when you complete that, your training, then where do you go from there?
So I had 2 years in Germany, and when I was in Germany, I was basically it was a, civilian job in a military uniform. I worked at an aid station, but it was a health clinic, not even like an aid station. It was like a big old health clinic with a dentist clinic next door.
Oh,
And so
wow.
it was like literally just, we were the medical for the whole base and for even the local nationals and family members and stuff like that. So it was just a big, big health clinic and I wore a military uniform, but I mostly worked, just like health clinic hours. I would go work out, do PT in the morning and we would go shooting sometimes, but we didn't really do field training exercises. We didn't do any of that stuff. It was literally a civilian job in a military uniform, and it was a lot of fun. But yet again, playing harder, got myself into some trouble, got married and divorced while I was there, and, that was when my alcoholism really took hold, and promiscuity and, ended up into a, army substance abuse program because I
Oh,
was, not showing up to formation or I would show up drunk and wasn't doing very well. Apparently, I had a friend who said I didn't remember this, but my alcoholism had gotten so bad that she had told me we went to Prague to go visit, and she told me if I picked up one drink, they would leave me there because they didn't like who I turned into when I was drinking.
wow.
Yeah. And so when I was there, like, yes, I worked, but it wasn't really like I was in the military. Because we didn't do any of the military type stuff really, And so, yeah, I worked hard, played harder. They ended up giving me to, the, oh, physician's
Mhm.
assistant.
Yep.
So there was a physician assistant that a lot of people didn't like to work with because he would stay, like, really late and I had a lot of patience with him and as that kind of caretaker person, it was I was the one that could handle taking care of him and staying later. So we had our little the way that we did things. Mostly everybody else would end up leaving and then we would finish up with patients and then afterwards I'd go home and change and go to the bar or go pick up some alcohol, and stuff like that. And that was kind of like the routine, you know. But I did love Germany in the aspect that I got to travel a lot.
So, okay. So this was, you did the clinic was in Germany?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so I was in Grafenberg, Germany, and, we had a lot of 4-day weekends or, in the evening, we could do whatever we want. You could jump on the train and go to the next town over, or you can, go it's just a lot easier to travel over there, like, because places are so much closer together, like
Yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting because, like, here you would say, "Oh, I'm traveling this far to go to the next state," and some people are like, "Oh, well, that's the next country for us."
Right.
Europe is some parts of Europe is a lot more, so, like, I went to Prague, I went to, Austria, I traveled all around Germany, went to Nuremberg, went to Berlin, went to, went to Munich, or they call it München, you know?
And was
Uh,
that on your free time?
yeah,
Nice.
yep.
So did you obviously you spent a lot of time out off of base, off, and such. Did you have a favorite food while you were there?
Oh, yeah. Doner kebabs.
Okay.
Completely and utterly doner kebabs. Mwah. They are fantastic. It's similar to, oh, what do they call them? The heroes. It's very similar
Mhm.
to a hero, you know, but they are phenomenal. Have you ever had a doner kebab?
I have not had them. I have seen them.
They
I
are
have seen them,
phenomenal.
but I have
It's
not
just
had
I
them.
I don't know. I think they do, like, different types of meat, but it's, kind of like, the hero, right? They've got the big old huge thing of meat that's just on a thing, and it
And they
rotates
slice it
around.
really
They slice
thin.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. The Euro, the GYRO.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, very
Um,
similar to that, but
yeah,
man, that was my favorite. Yeah.
nice. And did you have a favorite place there in Germany that you enjoyed the most to go to?
As a bloomin' alcoholic, it was Ed's right off base. That was that was my go-to because I could walk there and walk home, and, there was yeah, it was a very, very abusive relationship with that place, I just that was where I felt most comfortable. But when it came to traveling, I think my favorite travel spot was up to Nuremberg,
Oh,
because
wow.
in Nuremberg, they have something called the Christkringelfest. And so
Ah.
that's like the Santa Claus Fest, Kris
Mhm.
Kringle Festival, and that was one of my favorites. I loved being in the old town, just everybody is out. You could get a drink at one shop and with a mug, or, like a coffee cup mug or a stein, and you could travel to all the different stores and refill it as you go,
Oh,
and just go shopping, and it's just beautiful. I want to go there now sober so I can actually enjoy being there a little bit more,
and see all the
but
things you might have missed.
yes, yeah, but it was beautiful there. I loved being in Germany. It was beautiful.
How long were you there for?
2 years.
Okay. And then from Germany, where did you go?
So from Germany, I ended up getting stationed in Washington State, and, well, while I was there, like, right after I got there, it was, "Hey, you're getting ready to be deployed." And so, that being in Washington, I went back into combat medic mode.
Okay.
So, civilian mode, civilian health clinic, mode, and then now I'm into combat medic mode. And so we did training, we actually did, like, live tissue training on goats. We went, training in Yakima, Washington, and, in California at the National Training Center. Um, and then we got deployed, and, ended up going to Iraq. I was in Bakuba, Iraq, Bob Warhorse, and
Okay. What
I
was
was
it like for you when you first got there? Like, what was going through your mind?
oh, it was intense. It was intense. I've said this before on some of my other podcasts. You take a child that had so much trauma, and then a teenager who had even more trauma on top of it, and then, she goes to Germany and goes through a divorce and becomes an alcoholic, and then you throw a gun in her hand and send her to a war zone.
Wow, yeah. That would
I
be
was
intense.
Yeah, I was not emotionally okay, and there was a lot of, dissociation that happened while I was over there. There was a lot of, just kind of like, "Is this really happening?" Like, "What's going on?" It was intense. We were getting mortared a lot, and there at the beginning, it was like, "Oh, oh, oh," "Gotta run, gotta hide," but then, like, by the end, you're just like, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die." You hear the alarm go off or you hear the mortars, and it's just like, whatever. Or as a medic, sometimes we're required when that happens to run to the aid station.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, if we're gonna die, we're gonna die. You know what I mean? And so, but there at the beginning it was very intense, very intimidating. I was full of a lot of fear.
What was it like seeing the landscape?
Um, so actually, it's kind of cool that you asked me about that. So there was a couple of different layers to that. Like at first, it was very intimidating because it's kind of blah, right? You're kind of in the middle of nowhere, you know. Um, but then you go out into the motor pool at night, and that was the most beautiful starscape that I have ever seen in my life.
Oh, wow.
Most beautiful.
Okay.
And, like, the story that I have that goes along with that is, right before I joined the military, when I was dealing with a lot of the mental health stuff, my sister-in-law introduced me to an LDS Mormon singer. Her name is Sherry Call, and she has this song called "He Gives Flowers to Everyone." And, there's a specific line in there that says, "And when they're out of season or she has snow, or when she's in the desert where they hardly ever grow, he gives her diamonds in the midnight sky. Season after season, his love will never die."
Okay.
So in all of the emotional insecurity that was there, and I was the cleanup crew. I was a medic, and so I dealt with a lot of blood. I dealt with some death and stuff like that. But in all of that stuff, I knew that God was there, still there with me, regardless of what was going on. And so, like, when I would be on, duty at night and I was on call, sometimes I would go out to the motor pool and I would just lay down next to the trucks in the middle of the motor pool and just stare at the sky, and I'm gonna cry. And
Very good.
I would just think of that song, and I would just feel God's love.
And you'd feel a little better.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's just really wonderful. So anyways, so that is one of the big things was just that land, or that skyline was just the clearest I've ever seen in my life. And then another thing is there's a river that, like, you've got everything that's brown all around, and then
Right.
this river and everything's green, right? And so that was something that we would go by all the time, and so that was beautiful. And then there was also, one of my interpreters on, some of the missions that I went on. He at some point brought me a flower, and it was this most
Oh,
beautiful, bright, like, pinkish, reddish flower that was just beautiful. And, like, I was like, "Where did you get this?" I was like, "This grows out here?" Like, I could not fathom it. And so I put it in between 2 pieces of tape, and I still have it to this day.
aw.
Because yeah, it was just that reminder. Again, in that song, "He gives flowers to everyone." And so
Mhm.
God gave me that flower in the middle of Iraq. And so that was something that I could hold on to.
I'm just so happy for you that you were able to experience the wonders and of a place like that, right? To see through the doom, the gloom, and see beyond that. Um, and I'm really glad that you had that opportunity. Most people, of course, when asked that question, tell me about the landscape. It's a lot of it's sand. It's there kind of a thing, and that's pretty much the end of it. So I'm really happy that you shared that with me, because that really just brings a whole other layer to it.
Well
Go
well,
ahead.
like I said, throughout all of my traumas, throughout all of my pain, God showed up for me in so many different ways. And like he gave me this blessing to see how he showed up. And like there's so many people I talk to who are like, "Well, I didn't feel like God was there." And then we start talking. So I'm a recovery advocate for trauma and addictions. And we start talking, and I'm like, "Well, what was something awesome that happened, during this time that you were being traumatized?" And they'll be that. I'm like, "That's God showing up for you. That's God saying, "Hey, this is a really shitty situation that you're in, but here is this." I call them God dots. Here is this God dot for you. Here is something that you can hold on to find the joy. Now, back then, I did not appreciate it. I knew that these were moments that happened and I made mental note of them, but I did not appreciate it because I was so lost in my addictions. And it took me getting sober and really being able to hindsight is 2020, right? Kind of like look
Yeah.
back and just be like, "Oh man, look at all these awesome, amazing moments that God really did show up for me." And so it's taken a lot of rearranging my mental health. What one of the uh, okay, so I told you at some point I'd like to read a poem, and I have a poem that I'd like to read for you if that's okay. Uh,
Okay, you want to do it now?
yeah, so
Okay.
it's called The Power of Thoughts. And
Okay.
I want to read it because this kind of is the mental shift that I had to take because I was so lost in my trauma for so long. And so and so yeah. So this is called The Power of Thoughts. And thoughts are more powerful than a 1,000-pound weight. They can push and pull inside you, change your focus from love to hate. They can chain you down to the bed where you rest. They can definitely guilt you for not being good, better, best. They can contort the way all faces appear, especially the one looking back from the mirror. They can make you assume the world would be best if you can stop breathing with the rest. They can make you see that darkness is better and there's no point at all to be a goal setter. Don't fret. The solution from all of this madness is just changing those thoughts from pain to gladness. You see, thoughts are more powerful than a 1,000,000-pound weight. They can lift you up higher than this mortal state. They can open your eyes to a paradise of love filled with a light as bright as the sun up above. They can fill your heart with the connection we share with nature, each other, all things, everywhere. They can contort the pain in everyone's faces to become a gratitude of having been to those places. They can remind us of old pains and fears so we can be supportive and help others shed tears. Again, thoughts are more powerful than anything you can imagine. They actually control the heaven or hell you're living in. So I ask you today to go into your mind, alone or with help, go deeply to find the motivation to change your thoughts' point of view from pain, anger, sadness, or anything askew, and turn it towards hope, love, faith, and peace. And you will find in the end an eternal release.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you. But
You're
yeah,
welcome.
so that's what I've had to do over the years, because there's for so long I looked at my deployment, because there was a lot of trauma in Iraq, a lot. Like I said,
Right.
I was a medic. We had some guys that went over a bridge. I had a friend who I had lunch with her one night, and then the next day she was gone. She was murdered at the chow hall. You know, there was there was,
Goodness.
um there was a 12-year-old boy that got shot while I was there and had to help take care of him. There was a lot of other stuff. I got myself into trauma and drama, with a situation that I got investigated for. There was another situation that I got in trouble for, like there was a lot of trauma and trials going on there. And for so long, I just looked at Iraq as this horrible, scary monster, right?
Hmm.
But nowadays, with being able to have that mindset shift of being able to see the beautiful moments among that, has just helped how I tell my story, right? Like the story hasn't changed, but I am a different storyteller.
Right, right. I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
How long were you in Iraq?
So I was there for about a year.
A year?
Um, so it was August to July. So beginning August to end of July. So it was 12 months. And, after I had been there, I'll tell you this part. After I had been there for 8 months, I went home on leave, and so I was first 4 months, I was working in the aid station. Second 4 months, I went on missions with the field artillery guys. I was connected to the field artillery guys, and I was going out on missions almost every day. Go home on leave, my body relaxes, and my hips give out completely. Um,
Whoa.
I end up going to the hospital. They told me that I had bursitis and tendonitis is what they called it. Again, this genetic condition, I didn't know what it was. Back then, they didn't do any research or anything. They just said, "Hey, your hips are screwed." And they sent me back to deployment, but the last 4 months, they grounded me to the fob. I wasn't able to go on missions, and so I did aid station and ambulance driving for those 4 months while I was doing physical therapy 3 days a week. They were
Goodness.
trying to figure out what was going on. So, after all of that, when we got back stateside, they're like, "Hey, we can either do this really intense surgery or you can get medically discharged." And I was like, "You're not gonna do this surgery," because it was like an experimental surgery. They wanted to cut squares out of my hip bone to allow my bursa to have space to come out. Yeah. I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, heck no." So, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. And
goodness.
so that led me into my final stage in the military. And so I was for the next year and a half, I after I got back from deployment, for the next year and a half, they put me on a desk job and they sent me
Mhm.
up to brigade surgeon cell. And so what that is I helped the brigade with the medical readiness for all of the soldiers. And and for that year and a half, they worked on a medical discharge to kick me out. And so I wasn't with my normal people anymore. I wasn't doing field training exercises or any of that stuff. I worked at the brigade. I helped people get ready for the next deployment that happened the next year. Right
Right.
before I got out, I deployed all of these guys. There was a lot of survivor's guilt with that.
Yeah.
A lot of self-worth issues, because I'm not good enough. My body's falling apart. Now the army doesn't even want me, something that I chose in my life. Now I can't have it because my body's given out on me. So there was a lot of self-worth issues there, and ended up um ended up getting back into the alcoholism pretty bad. Well, when I was in Iraq, that was too. We were sneaking it and getting in trouble and stuff like that, and it kind of never went away. But yeah, when I got out, it kind of, I took a year off from drinking for a little bit because I just was like, "Oh, I just need a break." I didn't know that I needed a break from alcohol, but I was like, "Oh, I could take a break from drinking." I think it was, like, to prove myself that I could, and then after a year, I just started right back, and it got worse.
Ah, okay. And so you go through the process of being medically discharged. So what was that like for you?
Again, a lot of emotional turmoil. Like, I felt like I already was struggling with feeling like my body was my worth because of all of the sexual trauma in my life, and then the over sexualization in my own choices, you know, and
Mhm.
then and then you add on another layer to my body's my worth, where if I can't fulfill what they want me to with my body, they're kicking me out. So it's like this is something that I have fallen in love with. Like I said, I played harder, but I worked really hard. I loved being in the military. I loved it. I loved the camaraderie. I was good at my job. I had NCOs that would come to me asking me questions. I loved being in the military you know? And so when they're like, "Hey, we're going to kick you out," it was like, "Okay, my body really is my worth," you know? And so it was a lot of struggle.
Yeah. And so how did they process you out? Did they provide you resources to integrate back into civilian life?
Yes and no. Okay. So they do an outro, like I can't remember what they call it. They call it taps.
Taps?
Yeah. So they do out processing. You've got all of these classes that you do, and they've got to check these boxes, and they got to check your medical. Because I got medically excuse me, because I got medically discharged, they did a lot of medical stuff,
Mhm.
and they made sure that I had disability when I got out. And they made sure sorry. And they made sure that I had appointments when I got out. And so all of those resources were set up. I already had the disability, I already had the medical. But camaraderie, support in learning how to pay my bills, support in learning how to handle the emotional turmoil of losing everything, the emotional support for, hey, I just dealt with a lot of death and people being murdered and being hurt and stuff like that in Iraq. There was not a lot of good support in that, at least that I was open to. Now, I recognize that I did go to therapy a little bit, but I was in this part where I was stuck in, it's called selective honesty. So I'm gonna talk about this so you don't ask me about this over here. You know? And so I did that a lot. So maybe the support would have been better if I was open to it, but I was good at hiding. I didn't
Yeah.
need other people to make me feel better because I had my alcohol, And then also they started shoving pain pills down my throat because they're like, "Well, we can't fix you. Here's these pain pills." And
Ah,
so they helped me in some aspects but not in others. And so um when I got out, I kind of fell on my face a little bit. I was traumatized. I was resentful. I never dealt with my stuff. I am so grateful that I had the medical and I had the disability, and they also gave me a big old chunk of change,
right.
because they're like, you're getting medically discharged. Here you go. Now, I will say this: I was one of the lucky ones. Getting a medical discharge is the golden ticket. Okay, but there are so many people, a lot of my battle buddies, and I've lost quite a few of them to suicide.
Yeah.
There's a lot of my battle buddies that when they got out, they had nothing. They didn't get a medical discharge, they didn't get their disability, they didn't have the health care, and they didn't have the camaraderie, and they didn't know how to pick themselves back up, and they just got lost. And that's happened to quite a few people that I know, or friends that have been in jail, multiple times because, they had to do what they could to survive, or dealing with their trauma and stuff like that. But I was one of the lucky ones. But again, no one ever really addressed my alcoholism. They put me in a program when I was in Germany. I got in trouble
Right.
and put me in a program, but it was only a month and I was drinking at night. It was 1 hour a day and then I was drinking at night with my NCOs at the bar. But because they didn't see me ordering the drinks, they didn't care. And so I just was drinking Bacardi and Sprite, and just hiding and they didn't even ask. They knew. And so nobody addressed. Drinking was like so prevalent. Nobody asked. It was
Right.
just the norm. It was just the norm. And now I had some really good officers and NCOs who didn't drink, and they were great examples, and some of them I went to church with because, again, as I was trying to function and trying to figure things out, I still stayed connected to my church, and I still did what I could. I had one foot in the door and one foot out,
Right.
and so I had some really good experiences, but most of it was, let's distract, let's drink, let's camaraderie in that aspect. So when I got out, I took that chunk of change and I went to Vegas. Went to Vegas and spent 30 grand in 2 months, and it was just gone.
Oh,
It wasn't just Vegas, but I went to Vegas for, like, a week or 2 and, like, yeah, 30 grand gone, and I got myself an apartment, and like I said, golden ticket, I had a paycheck when I got out. So many people do not.
correct.
So many people do not.
Yeah.
And so I had enough that I could live, but I did not know really how to take care of myself. I ended up, getting into multiple forms of debt because I didn't know how to pay my bills. I didn't know, like, nobody actually had classes like, "Hey, here's how you pay your bill, and here's why you wanna pay your bill, and, oh, yeah, here's how to be frugal with food, because they gave me all this free food when I was in the military.
Right.
I didn't have to pay for it, and so there was just a lot of things that did not work out, and then I've seen it go even worse for other people.
Right. So I really appreciate you being really candid with us tonight. I'm going to throw out to the chats. If anybody out there has any questions for me, Marie, go ahead and put those out there now for me. And my question, Marie, is where are you at today?
So, let me fast forward through getting out of the military and to now, okay?
Okay.
I'll do a quick try not to go into too many details. After what I told you when I got out, that was 2011. I
Mhm.
ended up going to school for a while. I ended up, getting into a really codependent alcoholic relationship. Things didn't work out. I was we were together for about 4 years. I kind of lost myself into codependency because the when I was younger, my family take care of me. When I was in the military took care of me, and I got used to somebody taking care of me, and I just kind of had lost myself and never addressed my addiction. And so things just got worse. The relationship fell apart. When the relationship fell apart in 2015, I dropped out of school and I moved to Florida. In Florida is when I really got into the alcoholism really bad. Because I had taken my financial aid, I and didn't pay them back. They held my transcripts hostage, so I couldn't go to college. And so
Ah,
I was living in a college town, in a college house with a bunch of college kids, not going to college, and just started working in a brew house. And everything in my life was about alcohol and weed and promiscuity for a year and a half. And I, at some point, like kind of woke up and I was like, okay, I'm not okay with hanging out with these college kids anymore, especially because I'm not going to college and they're younger college kids.
right.
So I end up moving into a studio apartment on my own. And in this studio apartment is when I started realizing I cannot blame my alcoholism on anybody else. I am drinking by myself. I am going to the bar by myself. I am working at a brew house. My life is about the drinking. And I just knew that I wasn't okay. And I had a friend who kind of helped me see that I was bordering on alcoholism. I had a sister that helped me see like my perspectives were a little bit wonky, with my family type stuff. And then I almost got in a really bad accident with a friend while I was driving drunk. And
Oh,
God took the wheel and straightened it and saved both our lives. And I knew that I had to be done. So January 17th of 2017 is my sobriety date. And so I got sober, and over the next, 9 years has like, up until now, has been a journey of a lot of mental health problems. I have been in the psych unit 3 times, most recently this last December, and, I did a PTSD program in January. So, the mental health stuff, I was diagnosed, borderline, bipolar, and PTSD. 5 years on medications. They said that the meds stopped working because I'm not bipolar, I'm only borderline. So, they ended up having to take me off of those meds. During all of this time, I'm doing recovery work and, like, working through a lot of my trauma with mental health, with spirituality, getting more active into my church, becoming a member again, getting my recommend and stuff like that. Um, Going through all of these different mental health programs, dialectic behavioral therapy, cognitive processing therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, intensive outpatient program, a lot of different layers with
yeah,
that
you're
mentality.
keeping
Yes,
mentally busy.
yes. And then I've got the spiritual journey that I'm going on as well. I learned about like Native American practices, Buddhist practices, non-denominational practices, and wound up back into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And active in my church there. And then you go into, along with all of these layers that are going on, there's also a lot of physical stuff that is going on. I ended up I quit when I got sober, alcohol, drugs, and pain pills, quit all those. And then over the years, it was nicotine and caffeine, and I've quit those completely. And then food addiction got real bad, got up to 250 pounds, lost a bunch of weight, got stuck in bulimia for a while, gained a little bit more weight. My food stuff has balanced out now. But between all of my choices in my lifestyle with the drugs, alcohol, and food, okay, between the and that added on to the military and the toxic exposure of everything in the military, so the normal wear and tear of the military and the toxic exposure of the military, and then genetics, my body started tearing apart, and I had to get bilateral hip replacements. I am currently now in a place where I have to wear bilateral leg braces, where it's knee, ankle, and foot orthotics, where hooks into my shoe and goes all the way up to my knee. And that is my daily. That will probably be my daily for the rest of my life. I have to wear a brace around my waist for arthritis in my SI joints. Right now, my wrist is damaged. They don't know why it's as bad as it is. They think that I also might have an autoimmune disorder. We're doing a lot of different testing. Most of my joints are falling apart, internal stuff. So, anyways,
Hmm.
there's a lot of layers with the physical stuff as well. So, along with all of this stuff, last year, I started feeling better than I ever have. As all of this stuff, like I'm addressing all of this trauma, I'm getting into practicing a lot of mindfulness and radical acceptance as I am doing all of this stuff, getting right with God, spirituality, healing myself. I start getting this feeling that I need to help others heal even more. Oh, and along this time too, I got remarried. My husband and I just celebrated 2 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and he has his own medical stuff that's going on, and there's a lot of stuff that is we're working through right now. But he's got his journey, I have my journey, we have our journey together. So what my journey is, last year, I got this feeling that I needed to start helping people a little bit more and becoming more visible because I've done a lot of service work in my life and there's a lot of trauma I had to overcome to realize that I wanted to be a caretaker,
Mhm.
not that I had to. I had to
Yeah.
let go of these expectations from others, from myself, build these boundaries and making the decision that I wanted to help people because I wanted to. And so I had this feeling, and I'm just going to show you. I published this book, and it is More Me Than I Used to Be, A Journey to Freedom. And it is a book about it's poetry about recovery from trauma and addictions and finding spirituality and letting go of resentments. And it's illustrated by my own photography because photography is kind of what I got into for years with my creativity to help me find beauty in my addictions. And then when I got sober, I started writing. And God gave me this voice to write and to find love and joy in life. And so I published this book and I was like, "Okay, I need to get this out there." And so I was like, "I should do podcasting. Like, I should go be a guest on a podcast." So I was a guest on the podcast Every Day's a Saturday, USMC veteran. He asked me to share my entire story, and then he decided to have me come on as a co-host. And
Mhm.
so we started going in depth into our stories, and then we started interviewing other people. And so that is my regular podcast. And then I started being guests on other podcasts. And then I started doing just in general recovery advocacy, for trauma and addictions. I help people to find resources that are available, especially for veterans. It's
Right.
one of my favorite things. I'm connected to a lot of my local nonprofits, but also because I do podcasting, I am connected to a lot of federal nonprofits or nonprofits in other areas, in other states. As you know, I met you. I became a guest on the Tip of the Spear podcast,
Yeah.
which is a podcast for other veteran podcasters. And so I got
I am
connected
I
with
am
them.
I'm one of 2 token civilians on that.
Yes.
As yes.
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 And so started doing that and just started getting myself out there and started, just being there for other people and listening to people's stories and giving myself the ability to heal out loud through other people, and then also with my podcast, allowing people to heal out loud with me. And
Right.
so I share my poetry. I'm still writing. I've got a couple more projects that are getting ready to come out here soon. This one is finally on Amazon, and I'll be posting it on my website at some point soon. Um,
Excellent.
yeah, but, I just started realizing that I just want to be a voice for people in recovery and especially veterans, but recovery from trauma and addictions. Because that's the thing is, like, a lot of people when they think of recovery, it's like, "Oh, I don't have an addiction." I walked up to one person and I just like, "Hey, this is what I do, is there anything that you wanna talk about?" He's like, "I don't have an addiction." I said, "No, I help people with traumas as well." But it was just this so many people hear the word recovery and they think it's only recovery is only possible for people with addictions. No, it's for trauma too.
Right.
And the thing is like codependency, that is an addiction. Food insecurity, that's an addiction, right? There's so many different things that are addictions, with regards to it's trauma-based, and so that's one of my favorite things to do is just be an ear for somebody and help them find resources.
I think that's wonderful. So I have a couple questions here.
Yes.
So we're going to go a little outside the normal questions. You ready for this? And in
Yes.
all seriousness, here we go. He wants to know. So G23, great gentleman, been with me since the start of this channel, and he wants to know: is a hot dog a sandwich?
Um, I would say no because the bread opens upwards. I don't know.
There you go. All right. The next question, the next question is from Jason. And so Killian, so Jason's my husband. Killian is our oldest son as well as a Marine veteran. And he would always ask the question, did you get to work with Marines while you were deployed?
No, but I get to work with them now because my husband's a Marine.
Ah, that's wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Yes.
Yeah.
And then G23 also is
Oh,
in.
oh, oh, hold on,
Yes,
sorry,
go
before I
ahead.
forget. My co-host on my podcast is also Marine.
And
So
your
I'm
co-host
regular.
is.
Brian Roof.
Yes, I've
So
had
so
Brian on the channel.
yes, so the podcast is Every Day's a Saturday, USMC veteran, Coffee
Yeah.
Talk with Brian and Marie.
I'm pretty
And
sure I've
so
had Brian. I have to go back through. I can't remember what number guest you are. I'm going to have to go back and check that.
yeah.
So G23 also wants to know if there is going to be signed copies. So you and I can discuss that afterwards. And if there are, I will be sure to let everybody know.
I was just gonna say, if you're interested, go to sliderbabe.com, SLIDERBABE, sliderbabe.com, and sign up for the email list. And as soon as they're available, you will know. I will send the email.
There you go. So, and it is right there under her name, sliderbabe.com. I'm not seeing any other questions out there, but it kind of segueing into your knowledge of the resources in your area, specifically your area. What resources are you aware of for veterans?
So I am a part of multiple nonprofits in the area. And
Okay.
so there is something called Irreverent Warriors, which is actually like is all over the place. But Irreverent Warriors, there is Warrior Revival and Continue Mission, and also op or mm, oh my goodness, Behind the Lava. So those four, oh, and Battle Forged Foundations. Battle Forged Foundation. So those programs are some of the big nonprofits that are in the area that do monthly gatherings and dinners and activities, and they take people to do sports. They take people to do shooting sometimes, or to go skiing, or to go hiking, or to do all sorts of things. And they also just they do a lot of things to promote suicide awareness and stuff like that. So those are kind of the five big ones. So Irreverent Warriors, Warrior Revival, Behind the Lava Lava, Battle Forge Foundation, and Continue Mission. There's also another one called IGY622. And they had a podcast for a while, and they were doing a lot more visibility stuff, but had to take a step back for a while. But they will offer service animals, or training for
Okay.
service animals. Behind the Lava Lava, I said, they do the monthly gatherings, but they also offer a scholarship for veterans or family members for, I can't remember how much it is, but, just for different things if that's needed, especially for the children in sports, they'll offer little scholarships to help. There is another one that is called the Wasatch, Defenders Outdoors. That one's a brand new one.
And
Wasatch.
these are all in your area.
Oh, yeah, there's so many, dude. Like, I yeah. So the Wasatch Defenders Outdoors, they do, rock climbing for veterans. Yeah, this one is really good. They also do a, yearly annual, Veterans Day, Polynesian style event.
Oh,
And so
wow.
they celebrate, like, Polynesian, culture and veterans. And this luau is gonna be, like, real big. It's actually another program, Battle Forge Foundation, that is partnering with them. It's gonna be awesome. That's their Veterans Dinner Meetup, their,
Yeah.
Veterans Day Gala, yeah. So, this program I've especially gotten very close with, and I do a lot of advocacy with them and a lot of networking because we go to many of the same events. I got connected to all of these people through two different organizations. One of them specifically is called the Veteran Business Resource Center, and
Mhm.
there is one in most local cities or most main cities. So if you get a chance, take a look. VBRC down at the bottom. So
Yeah.
Veteran Business Resource Center, and that is a program where they will help small business owners establish their businesses. They'll help you with establishing your LLCs, the legal documentation, any certificates that you need. They'll help you with training. They'll help you with getting scholarships or funding. It's just, awesome, awesome. So VBRC, Veteran Business Resource Center.
That's
And
awesome.
so they host monthly events, and that is where I have connected to all of these other small business owners. Because, like, for me, I set up an LLC for my publishing company. And so, with that, I'm considered a small business owner, and it also covers, what I'm doing with my podcasting, and I'm also working on a nonprofit partnership to get my book into treatment centers and jails and institutions to like give hope to others. But the VBRC kind of helped me connect. And then also every state has a Department of Veteran and Military Affairs. And
Correct.
if you go to your state, they will give you a list of all of these nonprofits that are available as well. But there's so many different organizations around here, and that's just the top ones that come to mind. But there are so many other ones, and I've just gotten connected with a lot of the small businesses, small business owners. If you are in the area and would like to get connected to some of these, please, reach out to me, sliderbabe.com. You can send me an email. I'll get you connected. But there's so many programs in the area. Um, Wherever you live, I can basically 100% guarantee that there are nonprofits in the area, or
Oh,
there are
yeah.
some sort of veteran organizations. Like, I
Yep.
also go to a veteran support group, just it's not therapy, it's not recovery, like addiction recovery. It is just a support group that we go and we talk and support each other. I do that once a week. There are so many programs around. On
There
bases, you've got
are.
bases everywhere, and on your base, they've got different activities that you can go and connect to. Like, if you are feeling lonely, there is so many resources out there. Like in this day and age, there really is no excuse to isolate or to feel alone because there are so many programs out there available. And then there's also the online resources available. Like, we just interviewed a guy, that have you ever heard of the Stick Vet comics?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
we just had him on our
Yeah.
show last week,
Yeah.
and he has this whole Discord. If you get a
Yep.
chance, take a look
Yep.
at Sickbed, but he's got this Discord that has a not a counseling group, and
Yes.
so where people can just go on there and just bullshit with each other and hang out
Yep.
and talk. There are so many different resources, and if you are struggling to find resources in your local area, reach out to me. This is what I love to do. I will do the research for you. I will help you find the resources available, and
I
I
think
will be
that's
here for you to
wonderful.
talk to as well.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that. And for everybody who's out there listening, if you haven't already, please go out, subscribe, like after the show, throw a comment in the notifications. Make sure to hit that because that's the only way you're going to know of new shows coming on and the best way to support our veterans and the conversations that they're willing to share. So I want to say again, thank you, Marie, for coming on tonight, sharing your story, being very candid. And I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. And I want to say thank you to everybody who's joined me and Marie this evening in the chats and watching. Thank you guys for being here. Join me, please, next Sunday, 6 p.m. Central Time, for another guest and another conversation. So, everybody, please have a wonderful and very safe week coming up, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.